hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Kolan chamate, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Kolan chamate, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to those attending here in person and those participating from home through our live stream. We begin our service together on page 1 at the top of the page. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. And we continue with the responsive reading at the bottom of page 1. God has a dream. If we could but recognize our common humanity,
that we do belong together, that our destinies are bound up in one another's, that we can be free only together, that we can survive only together, that we can be human only together,
then a glorious world would come into being. And we continue with Shir Hadash, the top of page 2. Shiru Adonai Kol Haaretz, Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash. Sing unto God all the earth a new song. I will sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru Adonai Kol Haaretz, Shiru Adonai Shir Chadash. We continue on page 3. I'd like to invite up Beth Tacey to light our Shabbat candles this evening.
The path of freedom. You took us out of the darkness so that your light might dwell among us. You showed us your power to bring down the powerful, uplift the enslaved, transform the social order. You showed us your strength so that we might remember our own. We carry the Exodus vision wherever we go, lest we forget our sense of liberation, lest we lose the joy of breathing free, lest we grow indifferent and blind to others' pain. So long as we work to make you present, we walk the path of light and freedom. But if we forget to bring you into this world, then we return to darkness.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. At At this point in our service, we think of the week that has passed, and we hold on to all of the good things from this past week. So if you had an experience that inspired gratitude, if you have some good news to share, no matter how big or how small, I invite you to share that joy with the community now. Yeah, Alyssa?
Finished my first week of intervention with my students.
Mazel tov. You made it through the first week. That's awesome. Beth?
My COVID test came back negative, so I'm free to fly out tomorrow.
Glad to hear on both accounts. Ariana? Mazel tov on the raise. So we thank God. Oh, yeah. Marcy?
I had a kitchen fire, but it was very small, and it only totaled the microwave, and it was totally my fault.
So I'm glad it was small and containable and not too much damage. Yeah. Laura?
A friend that never called me before I was on the road there, but that was really nice.
Oh, wonderful to hear from old friends and to not have our kitchens burned down and completely. Yep. So we thank God for all of these blessings, including the blessing of simply being alive for this moment in time, the words of Shehechianu near the top of page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen. I'd like to invite up Grace Silverstein to read one brick on page 5.
One brick. The day I started walking, they handed me a brick, and then another. Build, build, they urged me, and so I did. I knew nothing of life outside the walls I built, until I heard a faint whimper coming through the cracks of the oldest facade. Hello? And like an echo, your reply reverberated through my ribs, startling and piercing like the cry of the shofar. At that moment, part of the wall came crashing down. Just one brick that separated me from you. Arms instinctively reached towards the light on the other side. You grasped my hand through the brokenness. My fingertips read the map of your calloused palm, a topographical record of all the labor, the pain, and the accomplishments of a lifetime, of building incessantly on the other side. As your hand lay in mine, I knew we were both slaves, but for that moment, you and I, we were free.
Thank you. We continue with Lechado D on page 7. Lechado di likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmi'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lechado di Lechado likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechado di likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha שמי קדם ניסוך, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי קלה, פן איש מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פן איש שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שתדברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת קלה, מקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פן איש שבת נקבלה. We rise together and face the entrance to welcome in the presence of Shabbat. בואי בשלום עצרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת קלה, קבלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, פן איש שבת נקבלה. And we remain standing for the official call to worship, the Baruch Hu, on the bottom of page 8. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Please be seated. And Stan will lead us in the piece of Wild Things, the bottom of page 9.
When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day, blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
And please rise for the Shema on page 10. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ruach Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha V'shinatam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, uv'lechtecha v'derech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, uv'shartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, Uvisharecha Leman tizkeru Vasitem et kol mitzvotai Vitem kedoshim lelohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Sher hotzeti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. And we continue on the top of page 12, and Marcy will lead us in redemption song.
Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? Because all I ever had, redemption songs. All I ever had, redemption songs. These songs of freedom, songs of freedom.
And we continue with our own song of freedom, Micha Mocha, at the bottom of the page. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai Micha mocha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele. We continue at the top of page 14. If all the world were free. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all the world were free? To build, to dream, to procreate for all blind men to see. It shouldn't take a real great deal to meet this lofty goal. Just an attitude of kindness from the bottom of your soul. But men would have to change their ways. That may be hard to do. To live or die for someone else, and to be honest too. To be my brother's keeper may be more than I can bear. To give the world all I can give, and most of all, to share. It's really tough, this freedom thing. Just where do I begin? 'Cause I've been taught that just one man in bondage is a sin. But one clear thought that keeps coming through, for people to be free, that God's great dream of brotherhood must be born in me. We continue with Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. And we continue together in the middle of page 15 with the responsive reading. In every life, there is a journey to freedom. When very young, we know little of freedom.
Freedom comes slowly as our thoughts and actions become freely our own.
At the beginning of life, we depend upon others, parents and families, to perform our tasks.
As the years pass, we grow older and travel farther along the path to freedom.
Grateful though we are to those who have taught and loved us, still we must see the world in new ways, our own ways.
As adults, we take responsibility for our actions and come to live in and through ourselves.
Our sages teach that free will is given to every human being.
If we wish to incline ourselves towards goodness and righteousness, we are free to do so. And if we wish to incline ourselves towards evil, we are also free to do that.
From Scripture, we learn that the human species, with its knowledge of good and evil, is unique among all Earth's creatures. Of our own accord, by our own faculty of intelligence and understanding, we can distinguish between good and evil, doing as we choose.
Nothing holds us back from making this choice between good and evil. The power is in our hands.
Please rise for our central prayer, the Amidah on page 16. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, U'mevii geula lifnei bneihem, Le'ma'an shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magin. Baruch atah Adonai, Kin Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol, Atah Rav le'Hoshia, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Micha mocha ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. Please be seated. We continue with a quiet moment for personal prayer or reflection. Page 18. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon, lechol ha-shalom. Shalom, Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who are in need of healing. Tonight, we think especially of Beth Levine, Rabbi Jerry Levy, Jean Sanders. Are there other loved ones whose healing we wish to pray for tonight?
Scott Layden and my brother-in-law Jim Harder.
Russ Jennings and Rusty Alshon and Hilton.
Elsa Friedman.
Sherry Schneider.
With the power of community, we pray for their refuah shlema, their complete healing of body and or spirit, with the words of Misha Berach on the top of page 21. Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mikor HaBracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. This week's Torah portion tells the well-known story of Noah and the ark. But prior to the flood that prompted the building of this ark, God had not established any clear laws for humanity. The only rule we'd seen before this point was not to eat the fruit of one tree, and as soon as humanity had that one rule, they promptly broke it. Right? So some still had to have a sense of right and wrong despite having no written kind of like legal code. Noah, for example, seemed to know to do the right thing, while many of his peers behaved with selfishness and cruelty, which is what upset God so much that God was like, all right, I'm going to erase this world, start again, right? A big etch-a-sketch shake. And God ended up punishing those who broke the unwritten rules of decency and kindness. So tonight I want to have a discussion. Do you think that it is fair to hold people responsible for their actions if they were not previously informed of the consequences of their actions? So why or why not? So there's a couple questions. That's the first one. Does anyone want to hear the question again? So, Fran, you say it's not fair? Okay.
If you expect somebody to do something, then they should know your expectations. And if you don't exactly share what you want them to do and not do, then you can't be surprised if they don't do what you don't want them to do.
So that's good advice for most relationships, whether it's between God and people or people and people, right? When you have an expectation in your head and you don't articulate that, but you'd expect someone to read your mind and fold something the exact way you wanted it folded, right? It's better to clarify. Ariana, did you have your hand up?
I guess I was thinking on the counterpoint that there are certain like laws and that things that are kind of expected of people to not do, like not murder, not hurt others, and not to, just general do things that cause harm. But people still do them anyways, and despite maybe because you don't know the consequences of what that could be happening, like the extent of how much harm they're doing or the fact they're doing any harm at all. And it's that doesn't excuse their like ability to like meet the consequences for those actions.
So some things, it sounds like you're saying, are inherently wrong, like murder, right? And you shouldn't have to be told, okay, the consequence of murder is you go to the courthouse, right? They have a trial, then they'll convict you, then they put you in jail for this number. You don't need to know all those details to know murder, not good, right? Marcy?
I was going to say essentially the same thing, that there's certain actions that you just should know by virtue of being a human being you shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. So that humans have an innate understanding of good, right, and versus evil, and we know there's certain things you just shouldn't do.
It's also a saying that ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Mm-hmm.
So, you break the law, and you can't come back and say, but I didn't know I was breaking the law. That's not going to hold up in court. But if we interact individually, like Fran was saying, we have expectations that we want people to abide by, but they don't know what those expectations are. Then we can't hold them accountable for reading our minds.
So ignorance of the law is no excuse, but there may be some expectations beyond the law, right? Just this is how I particularly want you to do something.
There's some societal norms that are just wrong. And you don't have to know what the consequences are, like Marcy was saying, to know that they're wrong.
So a good point. So second question is, what do you think? Are most people ethical and law-abiding because they have an intrinsic desire to be good, or because of the possible external consequences for not doing what the law deems as good?
You're asking all the easy questions tonight.
Yeah, very simple questions. Yeah, Ariana, what do you think?
I feel like it's a bit of a mix of both. Like, a lot of people have innate goodness to them, and they know what's right and what's wrong. But a lot of them have pressures, in both good and bad, to put them to one extreme or the other. And it ends up being like a lot of times that a lot of people tend to need some sort of reinforcement from some sort of power to tell them like
So I think your answer is very Talmudic. It's sort of where I'm going, but I want to see if anyone has anything to add to that. So we've got an inherent goodness, but sometimes that's not enough to get our behavior at the level that it would be ideally. We sometimes need that extra motivation to do the right thing when it's not easy, maybe. Yeah, Stan?
Well, I don't think it's all a matter of fear of consequences. I mean, I think sometimes if there's a rule, you should not murder, and we don't not do it for fear of the consequences, but out of acceptance of it, yeah, I agree with that. And I wouldn't, so we have a congruence of opinion, and not that, oh, okay, I won't do that because there's a consequence to do it. Maybe I hadn't thought about that before, but now that you say it, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. So there's sort of that maybe innate human understanding, a social code, right? That we all kind of agree that murder is a bad thing. So you don't need to be told of the consequences. You don't need that external motivation. Internally, you just know this is not good. Yeah, Marcy?
And sometimes even knowing the consequences aren't enough, like what's coming out now in the Pandora papers about all these people who knew the consequences of tax evasion were, and they did it anyway.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes even having consequences and making them known is not enough to motivate people to do something or not do something that is illegal or immoral in some way. Any other thoughts on motivation? Yeah, Fran?
Most anybody who's been around kids any length of time will notice that most kids innately act fairly kindly to other people, and then there's always that one, the one who isn't. And you know, in a classroom, you've got one boy who's going to be mean, who's going to do bad things, and nothing will stop him. And there's just some people who are innately bad.
So maybe the average human being has that shared agreement, right? Not murdering, not throwing things at your teacher's head when they're trying to do the lesson, right? There's certain things that most people just get, but there may be some human beings out there, right, who don't have that automatic agreement and say, well, why should I do that or not do that? Ron?
I'd say it's a deep mystery why we do anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we're confronted with behavior early in our life, it either resonates with us as being something really wonderful or really horrible. And I think we pick up on that and make it our own. But I think it's a mystery why we do that. And these are really, really tough questions because there do seem to be people who are just profoundly, yearn to do extraordinarily good things, maybe in spite of their upbringing or circumstances. And then there are people who, seem to have a yearning to do horrible things, despite their upbringing and circumstances. So I think these are really seriously difficult questions.
Yeah, so there's definitely an element of mystery. I think even if I were to ask you, why did you choose to wear that color shirt today? Sometimes there's a deep reason for it, and it may have just been it was the closest one to your hand as you were, looking through your closet. Sometimes we have no idea why we chose to do something small or even of greater significance than, what shirt you wear. Yeah, Stan.
And it may not be even so much like consequences if you do something that's imposed on you, but how you feel when you behave in a certain way. I feel good when I do this, or I feel bad when I do this. And it's kind of an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control. I don't do this because I feel bad when I do it, even if nobody else is going to do anything to me.
So that's a good point. Sometimes we can see this in the very black and white way. that if there's no like swift external consequence, that we, would choose to do that. But often, especially in adulthood, we choose to do something not because we're going to get a sticker on our sticker chart, right, or whatever used to motivate us as children, but because we've created our own understanding of motivation, right? I feel motivated to feed a hungry person, not because I'm going to get a sticker or because it's going to be on the news and they're going to say, oh, look how great I am. But there's just something about it, like it makes me feel better as a human being, knowing that I did something to help at least one person have a better day, a better hour, right? So our motivation could be internal, but still a sort of sticker in a way, right? A brain sticker, a little dopamine, like, okay, I did something good. Right? So the Talmud has this saying that appears a couple times, mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma, which means something that you're not doing for its own sake, for like the right purpose, you should still do, because as you do it, the right motivation might come along. So we see this a lot with children. Children often don't understand the importance of having clean dishes in your kitchen, right? They don't care. They'd rather be playing Legos. But you can give them chocolate, right? And say, if you wash this dish, you will get a chocolate bar, and motivate them to do the right thing to help wash a dish, even though they don't understand the significance. And as they get older, they might not need that chocolate bar anymore, right? Some people might, right? But we kind of internalize, right, a different reward of, okay, I have dishes available whenever I need them because I've created this positive pattern of behavior. So we have the idea in the Talmud that I think a lot of people will wait to do something good because they don't feel they're ready. And like, I don't feel like working out, right? I'm not in the mood to work out. But sometimes just getting up and going, after a little while, right? It might not be fun at first, but after a little while, you can say, actually, this is good. I'm glad I'm doing this, even if I wasn't motivated to do it at first, or I wasn't motivated to spend my Thanksgiving, feeding the homeless, but now that I'm here, I feel good about this decision. So we don't always have, the noblest motivations or the best intentions, but we can engage in a positive behavior anyway. So that's how the rabbis of the Talmud thought of mitzvot in general, is you don't have to wait for inspiration to strike. You just do it, and then later you'll develop the right understanding of why you're doing it. And then the last question is, do you think your motivations for doing the right thing have changed between childhood and adulthood? Were you more motivated by rewards and punishment as a child than you are today? Or do you think you're pretty much motivated by the same things that motivated you back then? Yeah, Ariana?
I think for me, I feel like I've become more internally motivated and more like, structured in like my morals and frameworks of like how I want to live my life ethically. So it makes it a lot easier for me to make decisions whether or not like I should do X or Y than it was as a child, where a lot of stuff was confusing. I'm sure myself and questioning things a lot.
So as we get older, we can kind of clarify our values, and once we know what our values are, we can act on those and have more certainty. Okay, this is what I think a good life should be. This is who I want to be. Whereas in childhood, you get a lot of mixed messages, right? Maybe from advertising, like, cool children have this toy and eat this snack, right? And you get all these messages, and then you hear things from your classmates, and you hear things from your teachers, which could contradict what your parents say, and you have to go through all of that and sort it out. In adulthood, hopefully, we have maybe more clarity, maybe more confusion. I think it depends.
When I was a small child, something tangible like a candy bar was more motivating. But as an adult, it's feelings and how I feel about things that are my internal rewards.
Mm-hmm.
If I get good feelings about something,
Mm-hmm. So having the candy bar bribe taken away can help you realize like the real purpose of something. Yeah, Beth?
I don't know if this says something about my childhood, but I don't remember rewards being offered, so I think behaviors are more to avoid punishment.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely has changed. I'm not too worried about being punished anymore. Yeah, it definitely is much more neutral reward system.
So there's very different parenting styles, right? Some parents are heavy on the bribes. Others are more like you're grounded, your toys are taken away. Like the punishments are given in order to motivate their children to behave in a particular way. But when our parents are no longer in charge of us, we have to become in charge of ourselves, right? We find our own reasons to behave in different ways. Yeah.
I think that, the chocolate bar from when we were kids, as adults, and I think this is especially true of a lot of my friends, a lot of my women friends, we substituted for the candy bar approval,
Mm-hmm.
someone's approval. And, it could be anybody in the community's approval, but I mean, so I think a lot of what motivates a lot of what we do is to get someone's approval.
I think that's an excellent point, right? We might think we're very different from when we were children and we wanted that candy bar, that sticker, but in some ways our brain is working the same way. And instead of the candy bar being given to us by an authority figure, we're looking for approval from our peers, right? That's why we have fashions that change, right? You're like, oh, if I want to have the approval of this group, I need to kind of keep up with whatever this group says. So that could be getting this season's sandals or whatever it is. But that motivates our behavior.
I also remember that, I would model my parents' behavior. And if my mother did something my father particularly liked, he would kiss her. And I would say, that's a reward she got, and that's a reward I want as an adult. So it's modeling their behavior
Mm-hmm.
and how they reacted towards each other and getting approval. And, as an adult, we model what we learn as children. And, sometimes, children learn, unfortunately, that, mama did something that daddy didn't like, so he hit her. And, so I get to do that too. And it makes me, makes her do more what I want. So my reward is that she's doing what I want. And so we model behavior.
Mm-hmm. So we're modeling that for children. Children are picking that up from parents, right? So it's not just TV, a teacher's playground, right? We're picking up a lot of different family signals.
It could be positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement.
Mm-hmm. So it could be approval, it could be affection, it could be recognition, right? Sometimes people will donate a lot because they want their name on that library or whatever it is. So kind of with the Talmudic construct, it's not ideal, right, to be in it for the fame or the recognition, but it's still better to do it for the wrong reason and build a hospital than to not do the right thing just because you don't have a pure heart that's only there to help people. Any last thoughts on motivation and Noah and humanity? Do you think the flood was good motivation to turn actions around, or based on the story, did that work? Not so well.
That's a little drastic.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme, right? There's a midrash that said that Noah was building that ark for 120 years, specifically so people could come up and say, hey man, what are you doing? And Noah could say, oh, I'm working on this ark in slow motion. In about 120 years from now, if we haven't got our act together as humanity, the whole world will be flooded. And even with ample warning, that wasn't enough that consequence, or the threat of that consequence wasn't enough to motivate people to change their behavior. Yeah.
Well, I think the fact that we identify and understand most of the stories that have been told for thousands of years, up through Shakespeare and the following before, shows us that human nature hasn't changed all that much. Even though we like to believe that we're getting better
I think it's a good dose of humility, right?
It's a slow process.
Mhm.
Very slow process.
So we have progressed in many ways, but we do share a lot in common with our ancestors from thousands of years ago, right? In the way that we're motivated to do good things and sometimes not motivated. Any other questions or thoughts? Okay. So we continue our service with Aleinu on page 22 at the bottom of the page. Please rise for the Aleinu prayer. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gdula leote breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratot, velo samanu kemishbechot harama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. אמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Please be seated. At this point in our service, we think of loved ones who have passed away recently or at this time in years past. Tonight, we remember with love the yahrzeits of Adrian de Agostino, sister-in-law of Renee Gould, Gail Dolgan, cousin of Marcy Horwitz, Frida Foyer, mother of Stan Foyer, Jules Foyer, father of Stan Foyer, Sandra Goldstein, sister-in-law of Sylvia Fine, Jonathan Gross, cousin of Alex Simon, and Shevach Mirovich, grandfather of Allison Litvin. Are there other loved ones we wish to remember tonight? Zichronam livracha, may their memories always be a blessing. We rise as a community of support for the Mourners Kaddish on page 24. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu. Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechamata. Tamiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may we be a source of comfort for all who are bereaved, and let us say, amen. Please be seated. So we're going to conclude our service tonight with the last little bit of Kaddish on page 24, Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu yaseh Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom. Please return your services to the table near the entrance and join us if you'd like in the patio area for Kiddush and Motzi. Oh, actually, I forgot announcements. Beth, would you like to share anything? Okay.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's see. So Torah study will be tomorrow, Saturday, October the 9th. It starts at 11 o'clock. It'll be both in person and virtual. I sure do hope many people will join us. It's really enlightening, and it's just a really good time. Also, I want to say that religious school will be Sunday, October the 10th. Religious school will be from 9 to 12 p.m. Torah Tots will be from 9 to 10 a.m. Pleased to announce that on Friday, October the 22nd, Jewish meditation will begin at 7 p.m. It will be virtual, and it will be led by Lisa Halberstadt. Also on Saturday, October the 30th, we will be having the Havdalah Ween at 6:30 in the Oremy parking lot. Shabbat Shalom. Does anyone have anything else they want to add that's coming up?
When was the Havdalah service? There's a Havdalah service coming up?
Halloween on October the 30th in the parking lot like we did last year.
Oh, Havdalah.
Some people wore costumes can be worn. But not required.
Shabbat Shalom.